Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Thursday, November 6th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The high in Riverside today is expected to reach 79.1 degrees, with a low of 53.7, so it should be a comfortable fall day for getting out and about. Coming up, we'll examine the Supreme Court's growing reservations about President Trump's authority to impose emergency tariffs and what that could mean for trade policy. We'll also look into the reasons behind the sharp decline in foreign food safety inspections during his administration, reaching record lows and raising concerns for public health. Plus, other key stories on global affairs, local impacts, and more. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning, folks. We start today with a blockbuster Supreme Court case that's got everyone talking about tariffs, emergencies, and who really holds the purse strings in Washington. Yesterday, the justices grilled the Trump administration over its sweeping use of emergency powers to slap tariffs on imports from China, Canada, Mexico, and beyond. Joining me now to break it all down is our Supreme Court correspondent, Ethan. Ethan, take us inside that nearly 3-hour showdown.
Thanks, Grace. It was a tariff-I-C battle in the courtroom, no doubt. The cases, Learning Resources Incorporated versus Trump, and Trump versus VOS Selections Incorporated, challenge whether President Trump can invoke the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA from 1977, to impose these broad duties. For context, IEEPA lets the president regulate imports during declared national emergencies, but challengers say it's not a blank check for taxes, which the Constitution reserves for Congress.
Absolutely, and these tariffs kicked off early in Trump's second term. Walk us through the timeline and what goods are hit hardest.
Right, Grace. On February 1st, 2025, Trump declared emergencies over fentanyl trafficking and illegal immigration, hitting most goods from Mexico and Canada with 25% duties and 10% on Chinese imports, later bumped to 20% on March 4th for China. Energy from Canada got a lighter 10% hit. Then, on April 2nd, via Executive Order 14,257, he cited trade deficits as a national security threat, rolling out reciprocal tariffs starting at 10% on all non-sanctioned countries from April 5th, with rates up to 34% on big deficit nations like China by August 7th. The de minimis exemption for packages under $800 was closed on August 29th. Affected items include pharmaceuticals, furniture, copper, aluminum, steel, wine, spirits, pipes, and even educational toys from companies like Learning Resources Incorporated. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection data reported by NBC News and the Tax Foundation, these have raked in about $89 billion in revenue through late August.
That's a hefty sum, but the justices seemed skeptical across the board. What did they say?
Bipartisan doubt was thick. Per NPR Supreme Court correspondent Nina Totenberg and NBC News senior reporter Lawrence Hurley, Chief Justice John Roberts, a conservative, stressed that tariffs are core congressional powers under Article 1, Section 8, and tied it to the major questions doctrine for big economic moves needing clear congressional okay. Liberal Justice Elena Kagan quipped sarcastically that emergencies seem to pop up all the time about half the world. Justice Sonia Sotomayor called them exactly what they are, taxes on Americans, and worried about slippery slopes like a global warming emergency for regs. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson highlighted IEEPA's post-Watergate goal to limit executive power. Conservative Justice Neil Gorsuch warned of an irreversible power shift, calling congressional overrides practically impossible. Even Justice Amy Coney Barrett pressed for precedents where regulate importation meant tariffs, finding none.
The administration's defense sounds bold. How did Solicitor General D. John Sauer hold up?
Sauer argued IEEPA's language is capacious, letting the president investigate, regulate, or prohibit imports as a quintessential tool, milder than embargoes. He cited crises like trade imbalances, eroding manufacturing, and over 100,000 annual fentanyl overdose deaths to justify indefinite use, pointing to precedents like Deems and Moore versus Reagan from 1981, upholding asset freezes, and United States versus Yoshida International from 1975, okaying Nixon's 10% surcharge under the old Trading with the Enemy Act. But he conceded it could stretch to hypotheticals like climate tariffs, though unlikely under Trump, who calls climate change a hoax.
Challengers push back hard on history and text. Fill us in.
Lawyer Neil Katyal for businesses like VOS Selections, a wine importer, and Plastic Services for Pipes, argued IEEPA constrains power post-Watergate and doesn't mention tariffs, unlike specific laws like Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act for security tariffs or Section 301 of the Trade Act for unfair practices. Oregon's Solicitor General Benjamin Gutman, leading the states, invoked the major questions doctrine, noting no prior president used IEEPA this way in nearly 50 years. Lower courts agreed with the U.S. Court of International Trade ruling May 28 in VOS Selections versus United States that it overreaches, followed by D.C. District on May 29 in Learning Resources versus Trump, and Federal Circuit affirming 7-4 on August 29, staying full implementation till October 14, but allowing collection pending review after certiorari September 9.
Economically, this is huge. Any projections?
Experts are sounding alarms. The Tax Foundation, quoted in Houston Public Media and Forbes, forecasts $2.4 trillion in revenue over a decade, but a 0.6% GDP shrink, 428,000 job losses by year-end, and $1,000 to $1,600 average household cost hikes in 2025 from inflation, flying in the face of Trump's promises. An NBC News poll shows 63% of voters say Trump is failing on the economy, with most opposing tariffs amid fentanyl and trade issues. Small businesses like Learning Resources report bankruptcy risks from cost surges. If struck down, refunds could hit $72 to $100 billion per Brookings and the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. No contingency plans from CBP or Treasury as of today, November 6th. But importers should file protests under 19 U.S.C. Section 1514 within 180 days or use the ACE portal for extensions. As of now, tariffs roll on under stays.
A ruling could come in weeks or months, maybe by early 2026, reshaping trade powers. Sources like CBS News, The Guardian, and Yale analysts predict a partial or full strikedown, curbing IEEPA but allowing narrower uses, with ripples to global truces and emergencies. Even if lost, Trump might pivot to Sections 232 or 301 per Atlantic Council and Chatham House. Congress has bills like H.R. 735 for reciprocal duties and S.J. Resolution 49 to end the emergency, but nothing new post-arguments. Washington Post and Prospect call it originalism, clashing with Trump's agenda. Houston Public Media's Andrew Schneider notes via trade lawyer Michelle Schultz, the tone screams skepticism, risking refunds and pivots. Ooh, Ethan, that's a power play that's got the court playing hardball. Thanks for the deep dive.
My pleasure, Grace.
And for our second story this morning, we're turning to a troubling investigation into food safety. Chloe, good morning. A new report has people rethinking their next seafood dinner or fruit salad. What can you tell us about these plummeting foreign inspections?
Good morning, Grace. Absolutely, this is like a bitter pill in our morning coffee. According to a ProPublica investigation released today, November 6, 2025, foreign food safety inspections by the Food and Drug Administration have hit their lowest levels since 2011, excluding the COVID-19 disruptions. The report, titled Foreign Food Safety Inspections Hit Historic Low After Trump Cuts, by journalists Annie Waldman and developer Brandon Roberts, blames aggressive staffing and budget reductions under the second Trump administration for crippling the agency's ability to check imported food facilities abroad.
That's alarming, especially since we import so much of our food. Can you break down the numbers and why it matters for everyday Americans?
Sure, Grace. The United States gets nearly 97% of its seafood, like fish, shrimp, shellfish, and other aquatic products, from foreign suppliers in places like China, Indonesia, and India. Plus, more than half of our fresh fruit, think bananas, avocados, berries, and citrus, comes from Mexico, Central America, and Chile. ProPublica, drawing on federal data and internal FDA records, projects that 2025 will see the fewest foreign food facility inspections on record in over a decade. Pre-pandemic, inspections peaked at just 1,727 in fiscal year 2019, which was only about 9% of the congressionally mandated target of 19,200 foreign facilities set by the Food Safety Modernization Act of 2011.
The Food Safety Modernization Act? For folks who might not recall, what does that entail, and how have things fallen short?
Great question. Enacted under President Obama, the FSMA gave the FDA new powers to enforce uniform safety standards on foreign producers, matching those for domestic ones. Inspection goals started at 600 facilities in 2011 and doubled yearly through 2015 to hit 19,200 thereafter. But as Government Accountability Office reports cited by foodsafetynews.com and marlerblog.com note, the FDA has never met these benchmarks, inspecting less than 10% each year due to chronic underfunding and staffing shortages. The GAO's January 2025 assessment, for instance, highlighted that the agency lacks the workforce even for a more realistic goal of 4,695 annual foreign inspections, as identified in its own May 2023 analysis.
And tying this directly to the administration's actions, what specific cuts are we talking about here?
ProPublica attributes the decline to deep staffing cuts under the Trump administration, quoting 24 current and former FDA officials who warn of heightened risks for contaminated products and foodborne illness outbreaks. At the core are 65% reductions in the FDA's divisions handling travel, budgets, and logistics for international inspections. This is part of a broader Health and Human Services overhaul from Executive Order 14,158, signed January 20, 2025, establishing the President's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. That led to HHS announcing a sweeping restructuring on March 27, 2025, titled HHS Announces Transformation to Make America Healthy Again, terminating 10,000 HHS employees department-wide, including 3,500 at the FDA, a 15% reduction.
Wow, that sounds like it's gutting the system from the inside. How has this affected operations on the ground?
It's creating real chaos, Grace. Remaining investigators now handle their own flight bookings, hotel reservations, diplomatic passports, visas, and foreign government coordination, slowing everything down. Layoffs in expense processing caused a reimbursement backlog over $1 million, deterring travel. As KFF Health News and CBS News detail, the FDA lost over 400 workers overall, including more than a third from the Office of Inspections and Investigations, nearly 40 food safety specialists, 220 chemists, biologists, and toxicologists. Nearly 1 in 5 positions in human food inspection divisions are vacant, with 40% of spots for critical foods like infant formula plants unfilled. A government-wide hiring freeze, extended through at least July 15, 2025, prevented backfilling.
Beyond staffing, are there other moves impacting enforcement?
Yes, operational freezes too. On February 26, 2025, President Trump issued an executive order implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency Cost Efficiency Initiative, freezing government-issued credit cards for 30 days, used for essentials like food testing kits and lab supplies. Many programs still face this, stalling microbiological testing per ProPublica. In early March 2025, 2 key advisory committees were disbanded: the National Advisory Committee on Microbiological Criteria for Foods and the National Advisory Committee on Meat and Poultry Inspection. USDA notifications on March 6 cited an executive order from February 19, commencing the reduction of the federal bureaucracy, calling them unnecessary. These provided guidance on pathogens like salmonella, leaving agencies without expertise, as FoodSafetyNews.com reports. The Justice Department's September 25, 2025 creation of the Enforcement and Affirmative Litigation Branch disbanded the Consumer Protection Branch by September 30, delaying prosecutions of contaminated food sellers under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, according to ProPublica and J.D. Supra.
With all this, what risks are we seeing in our imports? And have outbreaks spiked yet?
Past inspections show the dangers. In Indonesia, workers hauled dough in soiled buckets, and a seafood exporter got a warning for HACCP violations, like failing to monitor salmonella in raw tuna, per FDA import refusal data analyzed by ResearchGate.net and the Lund Report. In China, crawfish slid on cracked, stained belts with insects, sewage, and falsified pathogen-free data, as ProPublica reviewed historical reports, corroborated by FoodSafetyNews.com. Chinese shipments led 20.5% of refused fishery products from 2005 to 2013 and 44.1% of pathogen violations from 2002 to 2019. A 2017 CDC study on NIH.gov, covered by ContagionLive.com, shows imported seafood drove 55% of historical outbreaks but only 11% of illnesses, while fresh produce caused 33% of outbreaks and 84% of illnesses, mostly salmonella. CDC's National Outbreak Reporting System and FDA's Core Network Data Link imports to 195 outbreaks from 1996 to 2014, with 10,685 illnesses, 1,017 hospitalizations, and 19 deaths, rising from 1% to 5% of outbreaks. But as of today, November 6, 2025, CDC NORS and FDA core data show no significant 2025 spikes due to a 12 to 18-month reporting lag. The latest core report, covering 2023 and released May 2025, had 69 incidents, with produce in 37% and imports like Chinese enoki mushrooms for listeria and Mexican cantaloupes for salmonella implicated. Early 2025 saw recalls of Indonesian frozen shrimp for cesium-137 contamination and norovirus in oysters and berries, per Prevention.com and FoodLogistics.com. An October 2025 government shutdown delayed screenings, says CBS News.
Experts must be sounding the alarm. What's their take?
They are calling it a ticking time bomb, Grace. Former FDA officials told ProPublica, quote, "It's only a matter of time before people die," end quote, due to vulnerabilities in high-volume imports. The GAO and the examination note that failing FSMA targets since 2011 correlates with rising imported outbreaks. Critics in RAPS.org and TRPMA.org.tw argue unannounced inspections pushed by a Trump executive order are unfeasible without logistics, potentially tipping off facilities, as Malaysian outlet thestar.com.my echoes concerns over supply chain opacity. A leaked April 8, 2025, FDA plan proposed consolidating centers, and an April 21 draft HHS budget cut 18.6% from FDA's authority, shifting routine inspections to states, risking a patchwork response, per Bloomberg Tax and AEI.org.
This story, amplified by KFF Health News, FoodSafetyNews.com, and GAO reports, really underscores the high cost of these efficiency drives on our plates. Thanks for that thorough breakdown, Chloe. It's a recipe for disaster if we don't fix it soon.
You're welcome, Grace. Stay safe with those imports.
Here are some other headlines. In Chicago, the bench is throwing a flag on ICE. A federal judge has issued a 14-day restraining order over what he called disgusting, and inhumane conditions at the Broadview Processing Center after claims detainees slept beside overflowing toilets and lacked basics like hygiene and private attorney calls. The order demands clean bedding, toiletries, and confidential access to counsel. Meanwhile, in a separate courtroom, another federal judge may extend limits on federal agents, crowd control tactics, think tear gas and pepper balls, during immigration operations, a case brought by protesters and news outlets. Depositions defended the agents. Eyewitnesses say force was unprovoked. Together, the twin cases could rewrite the playbook for how ICE treats people inside facilities and how it handles people outside them, with civil liberties, immigrant rights, and press protections on the line. Your driving may be spotless, but your credit could still ding your wallet. A new analysis featured by NPR finds that drivers with poor credit can pay thousands more a year for auto insurance than those with excellent credit, even with identical, squeaky clean records. Consumer advocates say that's a premium on poverty that hits communities of color hardest. Insurers counter that credit scores forecast risk. The findings turbocharge a long-running debate over non-driving factors in rate setting, and could put lawmakers in the fast lane to follow states like California, Hawaii, and Massachusetts, which limit or ban the practice. With more than 500,000 premium estimates in the dataset, reformers have fresh fuel for the policy tank, and regulators may soon be checking under the hood of how insurers price your protection. On Capitol Hill, a fight over veterans' benefits is hitting close to the chest. After the Department of Veterans Affairs removed male breast cancer from the PACT Act's presumptive list, forcing roughly 100 affected veterans a year to prove service connection one by one, lawmakers are pushing back. ProPublica reports the VA cited an executive order on restoring biological truth, arguing the prior classification erred. House Democrats, led by Ranking Member Mark Takano, fired off a letter urging VA Secretary Doug Collins to reverse course. The PACT Act is the law, not a suggestion, they wrote, while Senator Richard Blumenthal introduced a bill to boost transparency on such benefits changes. The reversal could delay care for a rare but deadly disease, turning what was meant to be a fast track into an uphill battle for those exposed in service. And the travel forecast, turbulence, by government design. With the protracted federal shutdown stretching resources thin, the FAA plans to trim air traffic by about 10% across 40 high-volume markets starting Friday. Officials say it's a safety-first slowdown, as controllers work without pay and fatigue becomes a flight risk of its own. Expect delays and cancellations to stack up like luggage at a carousel, with major hubs likely on the list. Airlines are coordinating phased reductions, but if the shutdown lingers, the departure board could look more like a stop sign. It's a reminder that when Washington locks up, the ripple effects don't just taxi, they take off, touching millions of passengers, packages, and paychecks alike. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with GPT-5, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Alex.